All right, for more on this, let's now welcome political analyst Professor Sipho Seepe. Professor, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. A very good afternoon. So let's first get your general assessment of Malema's keynote address there, as the party, of course, celebrates its 12th anniversary today.
Well, it was a very powerful speech that focused on the strength of the DA, of the EFF. And what is important about that is that parties win on the basis of their strength, not their weaknesses. And it was also important when it's an anniversary to take people back to when the party was formed. And one of the things that he mentions that strongly is that this was a party that was not formed in the boardrooms. It was a party formed in the streets. And also that this was more of a movement that represents the ordinary people that have been marginalized. And also it was very important for him to mention, among other things, the location of why in Cape Town, in Khayelitsha. The first part was to acknowledge that they couldn't hold a celebration in Umtata because of what had happened there. The fact that the Umtata has been ravaged by floods, and therefore it would have been insensitive given the challenges that the people are facing there. But at the same time, the Khayelitsha was chosen because it was also a center of resistance. So the EFF remains that party that says we are here to resist not only that being black is to be poor, to be just disadvantaged, but also to fight against white supremacy. And it is for that reason that he was able to point out that even though the DA claims that Cape Town is the best run city, it says if you go to black areas like Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, the story is very different. So that context was very important for Malema to put. Then the rest were a number of critical issues that the EFF stands for in terms of how its formation has changed the politics of South Africa, how its presence in parliament has made the parliament a very interesting place, and that even today, despite having lost a few seats in parliament, it is still robustly engaged. It still sets the agenda in terms of its intervention. And he mentioned quite a number of areas, both that were domestic and also international. And one could actually say this was a message that you want to give. But also what is important is that the optics were also proper, that if you want to celebrate, you want to give people a sense that you are still there and still running, and you're also remaining strong. Hence the theme that says defend and rebuild.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Professor. I mean, I'm glad you actually addressed the issue of that very strategic choice of venue, by the way. Look, I was also not surprised, Professor, by the party's move to take, or in fact, Malema's move to take the opportunity and drum up the party's support ahead of next year's general elections, local elections. I mean, talk to us about how crucial it is then for parties to start taking this route as the LGEs are edging closer. And judging by the current developments also in the country, Professor, these elections will be quite a crucial decider in terms of the trajectory into the national polls.
Well, there were a number of statements that were made that one must consider. One is a decision by the EFF to say we are in parliament, we are in the communities, we are in the universities, but also to say, while the EFF has done very well in consolidating its presence within universities, there is a problem of making sure that the EFF is not an elitist organization, and hence the decision to say we need to move from what we call EFF Student Command to EFF Youth Formation. And part of it is to make sure that the members of the EFF, young people who are at universities, are not only concerned about the university issues, but are also located within the communities, within the wards. So that is a strategic move to simply say, you must remember that you come from those environment, and therefore you cannot divorce yourself from the realities of your people. So that by taking that posture, you are already preparing yourself for a major presence and major activism. But I should also mention the other thing that the EFF has done consistently is, one, to say every place is going to be a site of struggle, and Parliament is a site of struggle. And as Malema put it, that it is not about careerism. It is about ensuring that it becomes an instrument. It becomes also a place for a national conversation, and hence his decision to talk also about the national dialogue, which he felt that it's actually a waste of money, that money can actually be used better to deal with other issues that students are facing and the communities are facing. But beyond Parliament, the EFF is a party that says we are going to continue to be in the streets. So the streets are also a site of mobilization. And in addition to the streets, the EFF has also been very active in the courts to make sure that all sides where there's a possibility are used to advance the message. And the message today was still the same message that Malema gave 12 years ago, to simply saying we represent the marginalized, the poorest of the poor. And he also started by simply saying down with the ANC, down with the DA, and down with Ramaphosa. More to say, we also are taking aim at this GNU, that this arrangement is an arrangement that is not working for the people. But he also went further to say, since we've had the GNU and since Ramaphosa has gotten into power, there has been a steady privatization of the SOEs, and the EFF stands against that, to simply say we will not allow this privatization to continue. And they went also to say, even when we talk about the loans, we do need to challenge the idea that you can have a government that will go and mortgage the future of the country without it being subjected through a democratic process. And hence it says all loans that are taking place, the way a government goes around to get money, it must be subjected to Parliament, where people should know why it is necessary. The whole notion of transparency also came out very strong in the message.
Absolutely, Professor. I'm glad that you touched on activism there, because, I mean, the EFF has largely been known for its activism, especially among the youth there. The usual rhetoric we heard, of course, of unemployment, education. He did call for NSFAS to pay directly into the students' bank accounts. He also called for the end to GBV and crime. But, Professor, these are not new things, right? Yes, there has not been viable solutions to these challenges, but we usually seek directives from political parties, especially those that want to come into power in order to govern. And this has now become a trend lately, where there are never ideas of how that party will effectively address these challenges, including even the ruling parties. The reality also is that this anniversary is also taking place at the back of massive electoral decline by the party, especially where it was once fledgling. I mean, example in KwaZulu-Natal and even here in Gauteng. We've also seen the mass exit of some of its prominent leaders, even some founding members in the likes of Floyd Shibambu, signaling the ongoing internal challenges. I know they recently won a award in Seshego in the recently held by-elections as well, but where and why do you think the party is still bleeding membership as well as support, especially in the South African context of what we need as a political solution to the current situation?
Well, the point that I was making, which is very critical, is that when you're going to talk to the hopefuls, to your supporters, you are not going to talk to them about the weaknesses. You're going to talk about what is strong and what is relevant and why they should soldier on. So it is true that the EFF has had that setback where it has not grown in Parliament, is that it has actually lost some of its prominent members. But when you're going to talk about celebration, you want to emphasize things that are positive. At the same time, if you look at the theme of the party, it is of this celebration, it is about defending and rebuilding. So the subtext of it is that we are aware that the EFF is also under attack. We are aware that the EFF has problems, hence the need for the EFF to be defended. That's what the notion of defend and rebuild. And also to say we do need to rebuild it also in the communities, because it will not be in the boardrooms. And hence he was able to talk about all these things that are affecting the communities. But let me also say, one of the things that they can say is, first, we've made the parliament a vibrant place, instead of a place where people go there and sleep. Secondly, we have made sure that where the EFF has control, it has made sure that the workers are insourced. He also talked about the EFF support of the fees must fall, simply to say, when other parties were not keen to join that, they joined that much. Mm-hmm. So we know that you can point out to some of the things that were possible and positive. He also talked about that if you talk about the Nkandla, the so-called the payback the money, he says if you look at that, if it was not the EFF, that matter would have gone and dealt with in the way that it was dealt. He also brought in the issue of Palapala to say, yes, Palapala is still on the agenda, and that we must remind ourselves that you cannot have a president who has been found to be possibly guilty of some issues that have to do with the constitution, and also where there might also be criminality. One must also remember that it was President Mbeki, the former president of the ANC and of the country, who questioned the decision by the ANC to squash the investigation on Ramaphosa. So he was saying this notion of the inquiry and around the allegations that were made by General Mkhwanazi will come in because he is also saying Mkhwanazi's the investigation around those allegations provides an opportunity to go back to check whether the police, whether the criminal justice system was also implicated in a cover-up on the Palapala matter. So effectively, he was speaking to the people who were keen to believe his message, but also to say there are a number of things that need to be addressed. But of course, like you are saying, if you are not in government, it is easy for you to say these things. But it is also important that these things are said, because it makes no sense that a country as rich as South Africa can continue to have conditions of squalor on one end and the conditions of opulence on the other. Hence, he's questioning also of the type of trajectory of our economy. The point that he was making about the embarrassing situation in the White House, where he says, one, you had the South Africans are talking about beneficiation of minerals, and you have a president who seems to endorse what is the colonial imprint of our economy, where this place is a place of extraction. And he says also, you also had adults who were there, instead of talking about the issues facing the country, are there to gossip about the EFF and the MK party.
All right, Prof. I mean, in terms of the party also taking stock, I mean, in all fairness and to their credit as well, Prof, as you've also alluded to, we've seen the party really steering very critical debate in Parliament that has even led to some serious repercussions on those that they were putting to the test. We saw them campaign and go the legal route over the VAT increase. We saw their fight for transparency in the controversial CETA board chairperson saga, and of course, that public support of General Nkandla Mkhwanazi rooting out SABC corruption, as you've just mentioned. So what key priorities do you think the party actually needs to urgently address ahead of the local government elections and the national elections, as they are still mum on their immigration stance at this stage, which we have heard Floyd seem to defer from in his speeches since his departure from the party? And given the current challenges then faced by the country, Professor, South Africans also need a party and leader that speaks to prioritizing the needs of the citizens first. We have seen turmoil in healthcare facilities, as well as the systematic takeover of certain sectors, as well as businesses that would otherwise be previously preserved for South African citizens.
Well, one of the things that the EFF was raising is the whole issue of the insourcing. Remember, one of the biggest challenges we faced in terms of delivery has been the tender system, that we've had members or people that are politically connected being the one now coming up with companies that are supposed to provide services. And we've seen that fail. And the idea of having to insource people, as they did in the city of Johannesburg, where under Mashaba, they were able to even save money, is to also to make sure that the people are there all the time to provide the services. So the provision of services is something that the EFF appears to be concerned about, to make sure that as the Malema was now using the same slogan that the EFF, that the DA has used, that where we govern, we do it better, to simply say people are going to judge by how we respond to their challenges. So being rooted in the communities, they are able to find those issues that are pressing for the communities, and they should be able to respond to those. It is not so much about the leaders sitting in a corner there and deciding what the people want. Is when you are with the people, then you are able to compose the right song that the people will be able to dance to. So I think the priorities here, first, the party wants to be rooted in the communities. It must listen to the communities. It must be able to identify the most pressing issues that the communities are facing, and then respond to those. But at the same time, to deal with the historic issues that South Africa cannot continue to be a country of colonizers, that we cannot mortgage our future to those who are increasing the conditions of poverty. Hence, he also talked about the financialization of the economy, where the banks continue to hold everybody and the majority of black people in a condition of stranglehold, to simply saying, how do we make sure that these banks, which have so much money, are able to use that money towards the upliftment of the communities? Because for as long as we have this high level of grotesque inequality, South Africa can never have any stability.
Professor, great conversation there. Thank you so much for your input. That is Professor Sipho Seepe there. He's a political analyst with some sound analysis there, as well as reaction to Malema's 12th anniversary speech, which of course he delivered a short while ago out in Cape Town.